No more bullshit. No more bullshit.
We begin with this really tragic breaking news out of New Orleans this morning. 10 people are dead and at least 30 others are injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the French Quarter. Emergency officials say it happened overnight near Canal and Bourbon Street. You can see the scene right there. A lot of police activity overnight. We've been seeing ambulances, you see on your screen right there. Truly a frightening scene, as you can imagine. A number of New Year's revelers out and about on this New Year's Day, early morning, and then waking up to this news. The latest that we have from the New Orleans Ready, their emergency alert system, is that their 8th district, they're working on a mass casualty event. That is how they have described it so far. And again, we got that news just a matter of moments ago that at least 10 people have been killed and dozens more were injured. We're also learning some more information from eyewitnesses who have described some of the scenes, frankly, and some of the horror and panic after a vehicle slammed into the crowd. That's the word from some of the eyewitnesses. Kevin Garcia, 22 years old, spoke to CNN shortly after this incident. He said, "All I seen was a truck slamming into everyone on the left side of Bourbon Sidewalk. A body came flying at me," he said, adding that he also heard gunshots being fired. That's again from Kevin Garcia speaking with CNN just a little while ago. Another witness from Shreveport, Louisiana, Whit Davis, told CNN, "The incident happened while she was at a nightclub on Bourbon Street. Everyone started yelling and screaming." This is according to Whit Davis, running to the back. "And then we basically went into lockdown for a little bit. Then it calmed down, but they wouldn't let us leave." That's again from an eyewitness. This is Whit Davis from Shreveport, Louisiana, who said that she was there as this happened earlier this evening. You can see some of these frightening images on your screen of just a tremendous amount of law enforcement present. Again, on Canal and Bourbon Street, again from Whit Davis telling CNN, "When they finally let us out of the club, police waved us where to walk and were telling us to get out of the area fast. I saw a few dead bodies they couldn't even cover up and tons of people receiving first aid." Again, that stands with the information that we were learning. Again, just in the past really 30 minutes or so, we learned that at least 10 people were killed and dozens more were wounded. We actually have some emergency audio from the emergency officials and the radio sound from the incident. I'm going to play it right now just so our viewers can take a listen.
Communications to engine 29 and all units heading towards Canal and Bourbon. We're going to move to Fireground Tourist. You're responding to a mass casualty incident. A vehicle ran through a crowd of people. There's multiple injuries, multiple casualties. They need you at Canal and Bourbon.
Moments ago, the FBI releasing this statement this morning. An individual drove a car into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing a number of people and injuring dozens of others. The subject then engaged with local law enforcement and is now deceased. The FBI is the lead investigative agency, and we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. Let's bring in Ted Williams, Fox News contributor, former D.C. homicide detective and defense attorney. Ted, so initially the mayor of New Orleans comes out and says that this is a terrorist attack. Then the FBI in the same press conference says that it is not, and it is our understanding, obviously, with this statement, just clarifying, they're still investigating whether or not it is, and that's just the facts at this point. We don't know, but at the end of the day, Ted, I wanted to get your sense here of just the unpredictability of a vehicle ramming attack like this. Using a vehicle, this is a incredibly difficult type of attack to try to stop.
You know, let me offer my deepest condolences, if I can, Brian, to all who have lost their lives there. But as I was thinking about this as I was coming on, this is clearly an act of terrorism. We saw this just most recently in Germany, where someone used a vehicle to go into a crowd and kill many people. And as the chief of police or the superintendent of police there in New Orleans has said, It is no doubt in my mind that this was an intentional act. This person intentionally decided to go into that crowd and to try to kill as many people as possible. This is what I define as a soft target. And this is something that we have been hoping that in America we could be vigilant on, because we have not had this kind of attack recently in America. So it is certainly something that I'm sure with the Sugar Bowl there in New Orleans tonight, that they're definitely concerned about, and I'm sure it's going to be all hands on deck there in New Orleans tonight.
So we just got into our newsroom some breaking news. Fox News now confirming, Griff, that the suspect in this ongoing investigation that they're calling a mass casualty that left 10 people dead and others injured is a man who is now dead. They're waiting on his name, his age, etc. So David Spunt is reporting on this as well. He's working on this and talking to his sources. According to David Spunt and his sources, this guy plowed into the crowd, then fired into that crowd, exchanging gunfire with police. As we said, the suspect is dead, but it's unclear at this point, right? We don't know yet if he was hit by police or how he died.
Local police are calling it an act of terror after a man drove a pickup truck through a crowd on Bourbon Street, killing 10 people and injuring dozens. They say the driver then came out of the truck and opened fire on officers, injuring 2 before being shot and killed. Now the FBI is investigating. They say improvised devices were discovered in and around the scene of the attack. Those devices are now being tested, and the White House says President Biden has been briefed and has been in touch with the mayor of New Orleans. Jimmy Cothran, who witnessed the attack, joins me now to share more about it. Jimmy, first off, I'm so sorry that this is how you're starting off the year. I can't imagine how frightening this must have been. So can you take us through what you saw?
We were heading, me and a friend of mine, he had never been there for New Year's, so why not today? We were heading towards Canal, coming from the other end of Bourbon, when it just looked like ahead of us was something going on. We wasn't sure what, so we ducked off into the nightclub that was right there. Within 2 minutes of entering the building, 4 frantic girls pushed through security, ran in, and hid under tables. So we instantly, living here, and unfortunately with these circumstances, kind of figured it had to be a shooting or something not good. So we ran upstairs, and when we got on the balcony, what we saw was insanity. I mean, something out of a movie. The graphic nature of it, and it was unbelievable. We instantly counted, I'd say, 10 bodies, 6 clearly graphically deceased, and the others yelling with no one around. Everyone had just cleared the street completely. We couldn't understand why no one was helping. I am trained and certified, and they would not let us out. We just stood by and watched for several moments until it looked like what was SWAT or some type of military unit on foot was running down Bourbon with M16s towards where the suspect was going. There 100% were not any steel barricades put up. We had been up and down Bourbon since 8 p.m. and none of the steel barricades were up. That's how this criminal was able to go 70 miles an hour down Bourbon Street and cause this much damage.
So let's bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. He's been reporting all morning on this. Tom, I see your new note, but I'll let you tell us what you know about. You're learning much more about the suspect.
We sure are, and I'm going to fold in the reporting of my colleagues Julia Ainsley and Ken Delaney in here. First off, from an investigation standpoint, there is an active effort right now to investigate a potential improvised explosive device, so a homemade explosive device in plain English, found inside that individual's vehicle. There are at least 2 other potential, again, not confirmed, potential improvised explosive devices that were planted in the area. They're trying to determine, are those actual explosives? Could they have gone off? And are they tied to this particular individual? So they're looking at that as well. It's our understanding that this person had on his person a long gun as well as potentially another weapon. And the FBI now says on the record that this 42-year-old identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, and the FBI has now identified him publicly, says that he's a U.S. citizen from Texas, that an ISIS flag was located, and I'm quoting now, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Now, that ISIS flag that they say was located in the vehicle is believed to be affixed to the hitch on the tailgate. So if you look at this photo and you look at where the license plate is, it's a Texas license plate on the back of it, there's a white pole that kind of comes up there, and there's a black material, some sort of potentially a flag, a garment, whatever it is, that might be, in fact, the flag that was there. So that's something that they're looking at, Kate. In addition, we're told that they're looking into this vehicle and where they got it from, but there's no indication at this point that the person who rented this vehicle, which may have been through an application, so there's kind of like an Airbnb for cars, that this individual rented out the car, but may not have known this person's intentions. That's something that law enforcement will continue to look into. But again, the headlines here, the FBI now formally confirming the information that we broke several hours ago, that Shamsuddin Jabbar is in fact the person they believe is responsible for this deadly truck attack. We are told that shortly we will be, from multiple senior law enforcement officials, will hear that the death toll has risen, that this individual is a citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, and that that truck had an ISIS flag that was found in it. And that's what the FBI is investigating at this standpoint, from this at this hour, I should say, that multiple special agent bomb technicians from the FBI and other local law enforcement agencies. In this particular case, it would be the Louisiana State Police, the New Orleans Police Department, but typically the Louisiana State Police has a pretty robust presence on this. They'll take a look at some other devices, which we are reporting, according to 3 law enforcement officials briefed on the matter, at least 2 other devices that were planted in the vicinity that is obviously of high interest. This really changes a bit the security picture here, because if other devices were planted where they planted elsewhere in New Orleans, and obviously we're all acutely aware of the event that is happening tonight in that city, the Sugar Bowl, and what does it mean for that event? So a lot of questions here, Kate and Morgan, but I'll kind of send it back to you for any questions you might have as we continue to do our reporting and pour through this.
Let's bring in David Spunt. He and our Griff Jenkins are able to report that the suspect drove a truck with a Texas license plate that came through Eagle Pass, Texas, 2 days ago. David, what else do you know about this vehicle?
So we're hearing that the vehicle was traced to coming across from Mexico into the United States at Eagle Pass, Texas, 2 days ago. To be clear, we don't 100% know that this man, and we do know the suspect is a man, was the person driving that crossed the border. That is unclear at this point. We just know that the actual license plate was picked up by a reader at a border crossing. This is per 2 federal law enforcement sources to Fox News, that it was picked up crossing at that border station at Eagle Pass, Texas, 2 days ago. I know that raises more questions than answers, but we are providing information to our viewers as we get it, the most accurate information. So that's what we know right now.
There is just information coming in fast and furious. So let's separate out some of these ideas. First off, what can you tell us about what we know about the attacker?
Well, we've learned quite a bit. In fact, there's a lengthy YouTube video of him from 2020 where he's describing his work as a real estate agent. He talks about spending 10 years in the military, working in IT. Officials confirmed he was in the Army. He grew up, he was born in Beaumont, Texas, and grew up there. He was a resident of Houston, Texas. I mean, in that video, you see him wearing a button-down shirt with a jacket, looking like a professional person, describing his career in a very articulate, coherent manner. And it's just hard to reconcile the individual that carried out the attack with that man. Such different profiles, you would think.
Do we have any information on what may have been going on in his life at the time? Anything
from
an interpersonal relationship or finances?
Absolutely. So he was married twice. In his second divorce, he filed for divorce in 2020. It took a couple of years to resolve. And during those proceedings, he talks about not being able to pay for the home. His former wife filed a restraining order against him to protect her and their child or children, and that was actually granted. So clearly his life was starting to unravel after that video that we see from him in 2020. You know, in recent years, things started to go downhill. He had financial troubles. He also had sort of small run-ins with the law, driving without a driver's license, theft on his record. So he does have a record. It's not major crimes. It's not violent crimes, but he does have a record. And we're now piecing all of this together. We're trying to build a profile. The New York Times is reporting that he was a recent convert to Islam, so we're working on that.
And we know that there was an ISIS flag on the trailer hitch of the rented truck, rented through Turo, rented in Texas.
That's right.
Driven to Louisiana. We know that there was at least one improvised explosive device in the vehicle, more placed around the French Quarter. So what do we know about the fact that authorities definitively said in the press conference today they don't believe he acted solely, that he was not solely responsible?
Well, our sources tell us there is a video. There is video capturing multiple other people, 4 other people who potentially helped them, that investigators believe were accomplices. And our sources described to us that they were dragging the improvised explosive devices to place them. So we don't know exactly where that is, but we know that there were several placed in the French Quarter. There also were devices or parts of devices, precursors, as our sources call them, inside an Airbnb in the Laroque neighborhood of New Orleans, where we saw there was, quite a bit of activity. In fact, our producer down there, she said that she heard an explosion at the house. So much going on. Now we're also looking at a Las Vegas explosion. We're trying to figure out if there was any connection.
So real quick before we let you go, the multiple locations that we know are being investigated in connection with this include the Airbnb location in the Laroque neighborhood in New Orleans and the attacker's home in Houston, correct?
Correct. And then, of course, Bourbon Street, where he carried out the attack. In and around there were other explosive devices found in that neighborhood.
Investigators say they believe Shamsuddin Jabbar wasn't acting alone, and they're looking into whether he had accomplices. It's believed Jabbar drove a pickup truck at high speed into large crowds, killing 15 people and leaving dozens of others injured. He opened fire before being shot dead by police.
That's right. I mean, the FBI said that they believe that there are accomplices in this. Now, they didn't give any more details other than to say that they are searching for, in their words, some bad people, at the same time as trying to secure this city. They will, of course, be looking extremely closely at the background of Shamsuddin Jabbar as they continue that investigation. We now know, and the army has confirmed, that he spent a decade in the US military. He had deployed to Afghanistan for around a year from 2009. Also emerged as a YouTube video that he himself made in recent years, saying that he was an estate agent, an IT specialist. That's what he did in the army, and also I think giving the investigators further lines of clues as they continue to scour this scene, try and secure the city, and look into the background of their main perpetrator, the main suspect in this attack.
One thing that we haven't really heard are personal witness accounts of what happened out there. And we caught up with someone who was there this morning as this horrific scene unfolded. So let's take a listen to what they had to say.
Like around 3:15, everybody just chilling. We having a good time, music playing and all that. A truck, I didn't know it was a Ford F-150. I thought it was like a Yukon or something. A truck hits the corner and comes barreling through people, throwing people like a movie scene, like real life, throwing people into the air, they falling under the car, all of that. And a good friend of mine actually passed away from getting hit by it. And you know the little divots in the wall just like this? So this is what a lot of people jumped into to get away from the truck. But yeah, so after it gets past us, the guy, I didn't know it was a terrorist, but the guy ends up getting out and shooting people. Like he had ARs and bombs and all that, man. But the aftermath was really what got me. Like bodies all up and down the street. Everybody screaming and hollering. You look down, you see somebody doing CPR. You look around, people crying on the floor. Like brains matter all over the ground. And yeah, it really hurt me to see like one of my closest friends like that.
The FBI now officially classifying the New Orleans attack that killed 14 people an act of terrorism.
All right, in this, as we learn more about the ISIS-inspired suspect's path toward radicalization.
Yeah, now it's a terrorist attack. Garrett Tenney is alive with what we're learning. Hey, Garrett.
Yeah, good morning, y'all. That path to radicalization is a big part of what investigators are now focusing on, and we are learning new details about the suspect from his family. Shaddam Jabbar's brother tells Fox News that for years, the U.S. Army veteran had been trying to find himself and looking for something to guide him, ground him, and set him straight, which was in part what led him to join the military. The brother says the whole family grew up Muslim, but that Shamsuddin took a step away from the religion in his 20s and more recently got back into his faith after his second divorce. The FBI has released these new surveillance pictures showing Jabbar in the hours leading up to the attack, walking through the French Quarter and placing 2 coolers with IEDs inside that he apparently planned to detonate during the massacre. Investigators found bomb-making materials at a nearby Airbnb where the suspect was staying, and they now believe the suspect acted alone and that he did not have any accomplices.
14 innocent victims were killed in this senseless attack, and at least 35 are injured. First and foremost, let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
Yeah, back here on Bourbon Street, you can see a growing memorial here at the entrance from Canal Street. This is where Jabbar drove the truck around a police car and came through. You can also see this is a point of growing criticism of city officials for not having adequate security precautions in place. Yesterday, the city installed these barriers along the sidewalk, these heavy steel barriers, which would prevent a car from driving up onto the sidewalk just like Jabbar did. If these had been in place, it would have prevented that attack from happening. When the city's chief of police was asked, why weren't these in place Tuesday night? She said, I didn't even know we had them. City officials have said, though, that if it didn't happen here, this guy was so set on killing and creating destruction that he would have done it somewhere else.
I'm going to begin with new information on the explosive devices planted by the New Orleans attacker. Officials are telling our John Miller that the attacker, who drove a car through that crowd in the early hours of New Year's Day, murdering 14 people, injuring dozens more, used a rare organic compound not previously seen before in the United States. And officials are trying to determine exactly how the attacker may have obtained it. These are crucial new details. We have more on this coming up here in just a moment, and it comes as we are having more information coming in on the man who blew himself up in a Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Officials just releasing video of Matthew Livelsberger stopping at a charging station en route to Las Vegas. You can see him there walking towards the vehicle, appears to get inside of it. Now, officials say that his act in front of the Trump Hotel was a suicide. They say Livelsberger was suffering from PTSD and had trouble in his personal life. We know Livelsberger was active duty. He served in the special forces. He'd served in Afghanistan. He was a highly decorated military member. Similarly, the New Year's Eve attacker in New Orleans, Shamsuddin Jabbar, also served in Afghanistan, also decorated for his service. His commander in Afghanistan tweeting today, quote, I am in utter disbelief. He was a great soldier, someone who showed discipline and dedication. To think that the same individual who once embodied quiet professionalism could harbor so much hate, leading to such unspeakable atrocities, is incomprehensible and heartbreaking. But a newly uncovered audio file uploaded by Jabbar about a year ago offers a look into his religious beliefs. There he says, quote, Satan's voice is also the misleading of people from Allah's way. They really go hand in hand. And we see what this gradually drives a person to. It's a gentle, gradual luring into the things that God has made forbidden to us. The intoxicants like marijuana, alcohol, sedatives, opioid stimulants, and others. But despite the military and service similarities between the two attackers, officials say that the two incidents are not connected. But still tonight, law enforcement is on high alert as the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are warning of possible attacks.
My name is Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. At 8:40 a.m. Las Vegas time, we received a report of an explosion and a fire at the Trump Towers, the iconic hotel that you see behind me. We were told that a 2024 Cybertruck pulled up to the front of the hotel, and in fact, I can tell you it pulled right up to the glass entrance doors of the hotel. We saw that smoke start showing from the vehicle, and then a large explosion from the truck occurs. There is one deceased individual in the Cybertruck, and I don't know whether it's a male or female at this time. We are investigating a number of leads, and I'm not prepared to release any of that information to you just yet. I can tell you that there are 7 victims right now that sustained injuries from the explosion. All of those have been reported to me at this point as minor injuries. We'll continue to hope and pray for their immediate recovery. Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here to give you really a brief update on what occurred on Las Vegas Boulevard this morning. As you know, we just had our New Year's Eve event where we successfully protected the city, where over 400,000 people were here last night. And that changed this morning at about 8:40 when a 2024 Tesla Cybertruck pulled into the area valet of the Trump International Hotel. Very quickly thereafter that, the driver, who was the sole occupant of the truck, we saw what looked like maybe some sort of smoke, and then the truck exploded. Smoke was coming from inside of the truck after we noticed the flash and the explosion, and I'm going to show you that first video. That's the Cybertruck parked right in front of the doors. Can you play that again, Carlos? So the individual that was in that truck is obviously deceased, still in the truck as we speak here today. Our fire department folks, Engine 12, a number of others, you'll hear from one of the fire chiefs here in just a moment, arrived very quickly along with my officers. And obviously we knew that we had a much larger event than just a vehicle fire. And so there's going to be a drone video that plays to my left again. You'll see as the fire initially, they covered it with the tarp to try to get it to go out. Once the fire went out through the suppression efforts of the fire department, you'll see some of the evidence in the back of the vehicle. So those are gasoline canisters. They are camp fuel canisters and large firework mortars. What I also would like you to pay attention to on that video, as you see that, it looks like the exterior of that truck is completely intact as it sits there. The fact that this was a Cybertruck really limited the damage that occurred inside of the valet, because it had most of the blast go up through the truck and out. In fact, if you look on that video, you'll see that the front glass doors at the Trump Hotel were not even broken by that blast, which they were parked directly in front of. You can see that in the video there. What I will update, I'm very well aware that there's a name already been reported out into the media. I am not going to confirm any names to you as I sit here today, because I cannot do that with 100% certainty of who the individual is. What I can tell you is we do know the truck was rented in Colorado. We were able to trace that truck through the Tesla charging stations, and it arrived here in Las Vegas this morning at about 7:30 and went up and down Las Vegas Boulevard before immediately pulling into the Trump Towers. There is no further threat to the community as I sit here today. And I just want to make sure that our community understands we believe this to be an isolated incident, and it is now over as far as the danger. As many of you went to sleep last night, and I just want to give you an update on a lot of what it is that we found through the processing of the cyber truck. This is a joint investigation involving the FBI, the ATF, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and these folks worked through the night and found a lot of stuff that is very useful for this investigation. As you look at this cyber truck here, we had to transport this down to our fleet services so that we could really get through this thing. And I remind you that the subject inside wasn't able to be removed for a very long period of time because he was burnt beyond recognition. And so as we continue to move through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about his identity and what we believe, but I would like to highlight a couple of things that the teams found inside of the cyber truck that are useful to the investigation. And that, first and foremost, is a military identification. We also found a passport. We found a Desert Eagle 50 caliber semi-automatic pistol. And if you'll notice on a lot of these guns that we're going to talk about here, they're almost just burnt beyond recognition as well. There's a SLR model B30 semi-automatic firearm, number of fireworks that were still in the vehicle that had to be removed. Notably, we found an iPhone and a smartwatch, and then several credit cards were also in the name of our subject. Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987. Now, as you'll see here on a picture of his driver's license, let's see, the question really still remains for me, and I know that there's a lot of you folks in the media that are identifying this person as the person in our vehicle. As I mentioned to you already, his body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle. And so as I'm calling it now, the subject or person of interest, I will not come back until I have the confirmation through DNA or medical records that this is indeed, in fact, the subject inside of the vehicle. Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle. Obviously, in how we're trying to identify him, and I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information, is a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are 2 tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body. That has given us a lot of confidence that this is, in fact, the same person, as well as which the clearly obvious, which is the credit cards, the military identification, the passport. And then furthermore, as you'll see here in just a very short period of time, we tracked his movements from Colorado to Las Vegas, and in a number of the photographs that we were able to determine, he was the individual that was driving the vehicle. And also, I'd like to iterate this point to you. We still have only ever seen him in this vehicle, and we're not aware of any other subjects involved in this particular case. Now, I would like to acknowledge a couple of things because I know what's going on in the social media world, and there are a number of things in this case that are similar to the attack in New Orleans. We do know that our subject here served in the military. In fact, he's a current member of the military. Both of the subjects served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. What we do know about that is it's a very large military base, and we have no record that they served in the same unit or even at the same years at Fort Bragg, something that continues to remain under investigation. I also know that they both served in Afghanistan in 2009. We don't have any evidence that they were in the same province in Afghanistan, the same location, or the same unit. Again, something else that remains under investigation. And we also know, of course, that they both used the rental company Turo to rent their vehicles. As far as his military background, it's been confirmed by DOD that he was indeed in the United States Army. He was also a Green Beret operations sergeant who spent most of his time at Fort Carson, Colorado, and in Germany. He was on approved leave from Germany, where he was serving with the 10th Special Forces Group. He was also previously in the National Guard and the Army Reserve.
Some new clues into why a Green Beret set off a homemade bomb outside of Trump Tower. Thanks for joining us here at 4. I'm Heather Mills.
And I'm Ozzy Mora. Police and federal leaders telling us 37-year-old Matthew Laversberger kept a digital journal and likely planned the New Year's Day bombing. 8 News Now investigator David Charnes following this every step of the way. He's live outside the Trump Hotel with new information.
And Ozzy and Heather, before setting off this bomb at the Trump Hotel behind me, police say Matthew Laversberger left behind something that they're calling a digital journal, notes in his phone that said in part that it was time for America to wake up and rally, his words, around President-elect Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And that has led the FBI and Metro Police to believe that this was all planned and all meant to be some sort of stunt. This new video we received today shows Laversberger charging that Tesla Cybertruck that he would then explode in Kingman before the bombing. It's just one piece of new evidence, including photos and writings investigators found on his phone. Police say this video shows Laversberger walking around that car, soon to be full of fireworks and consumer explosives that investigators say he actually bought on his way here in New Mexico. Now, writings on Laversberger's phone indicates frustration with the military, and in one of them he said, quote, "Fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves." The FBI saying today there is no tie right now, no known tie right now, as to why he chose this hotel or that Tesla.
Through these interviews, we've found that the subject held no animosity towards the president-elect. That's something that's also been reported. Investigative steps have discovered, and information from the Army indicates, that he likely suffered from PTSD, and we are also aware that there were potential other family issues or personal grievances in his own life that may have been contributing factors. Again, we're looking into all of that.
Laversberger's father telling CBS News that his son worked with drones in the military. Today, the Sean Ryan Show, that's a podcast hosted by a former Navy SEAL, released an interview with a former intelligence analyst who said he received an email from Laversberger in the days before this explosion. The analyst says that email includes information about Chinese drones and national security threats. The FBI would only tell us that they are now trying to see if it is in fact Laversberger who sent that email. And Metro also saying they were aware of that email, that they've known about it for several days, and they are looking through it, and that's why they released those excerpts to us today. Also important to tell you that Metro and the FBI believe that this was 100% Matthew Laversberger alone, that he drove the car here, that he died by suicide here, and he is the only one responsible. They're trying to figure out, though, exactly how he detonated that bomb, and we'll talk about that coming up on 8 News Now at 4:30. Live outside the Trump Hotel near Fashion Show Drive, I'm David Charnes, 8 News Now.
To some breaking news now. The FBI arresting a Virginia man earlier this month after finding what prosecutors describe as the largest seizure of homemade explosives in Bureau history. In court documents, prosecutors say Brad Kenneth Spafford is an extreme danger to the community, and they're trying to keep him in jail. They say he had a stockpile of more than 150 pipe bombs, with some preloaded into a wearable vest. Let's get right to our Ken Delaney. And Ken, what is Spafford charged with right now? And what else did investigators say they found?
As of now, Valerie, he's only charged with illegally possessing a short-barreled, unregistered rifle. But it seems pretty clear they're planning more charges. They were arguing to this federal judge that he should not be released on bond because he's a danger to the community, not only because they recovered that massive cache of explosives, but because he appears to be an anti-government extremist. They said that he was using pictures of President Biden for target practice, and he talked to a neighbor about bringing back political assassinations. So he appears to have some very extreme beliefs, and the federal government wants him behind bars. That's where he is right now while a judge considers the evidence, Valerie.
We know he was only recently arrested, but this investigation goes back at least a year, right?
That's right. A neighbor became interested in him when he moved to the area near Norfolk, Virginia, and noticed that he had lost some fingers and learned that it was because of his handling of homemade explosives. And that neighbor provided the tip to the FBI and also apparently recorded this person secretly. So the FBI has been watching him for a while, but they only recently got a search warrant to go to the residence, and then they found the explosives.
I can only imagine what this mountain of weapons actually looked like if it was the largest the FBI's ever gotten their hands on. Just talk about the significance of that first.
Well, I think it goes to, like, they caught someone in the planning stage, thank God, because he actually has the means to start doing things. He has the weapons. He has the knowledge to start making these. Even though he lost 3 fingers, he's not that good, but he's gotten better. But I think he's really dangerous. I think you're combining some probably psychological mental health issues with the means to start doing something. And then I think it was just going to start rounding about to the point where he actually took action, and they got him before that. So hopefully the judge, even though he did release him with electronic monitoring, but he's now going back to consider the government saying he's a danger. And I think he is. He's a danger to his family, having explosives like that in his refrigerator alone.
Yeah, you know, with kids able to access it too. He's reportedly linked to this far-right group or far-right ideology called No Lives Matter. Tell us more about that group, and was that a group that was ever on your radar at the FBI?
It wasn't on my radar. The later stages after I got off the hostage rescue team, I wasn't doing any of the tactical stuff against groups like this, because when you do look at doing something, you really have to do a lot of planning. But I think these groups have expounded quite a bit since 2016. Some of them feel there's all kinds of different triggers for them. And I think some of them are going to get even further enabled to a point. They think that the new administration may be on their side. But the problem is, I think they get into paranoia, and anybody that doesn't do something that they think is going to help their cause, they'll target. And I think that's the dangerous part. They feel enabled by some of the other support that they're seeing.
And you bring up a good point. Last question before I let you go. Every time a story like this breaks, I'm like, how do you become this person, right? I mean, this was a group that promotes self-harm, animal abuse. How do you go so far down that dark rabbit hole to become that person? What's typically the profile?
Well, they're looking for someone to blame for a lot of their problems, things that they don't like. And it's actually the same as some of the terrorist recruiting. I saw in the white supremacy movements that when I was doing undercover that we were looking at going at, they have all this anger and they want to vent it to someone. It's got to be someone else's fault. And then they get a charismatic leader or leaders that start putting out the information of who to blame and how to blame them. And they get in these deep holes. They get on the internet and they get idolized. So it is the same as a terrorist group. You know, they're looking for those people to blame on stuff, and then they focus all their efforts on it.
This one is actually coming in out of Idaho. I want to tell you what police are providing at this point. Now, they do say that a man has been arrested after investigators say he actually placed an improvised explosive device on a train car. Take a look. That is his mugshot that has been released by investigators. This was over in Payette. Police say on New Year's Day, around 6 p.m. local time, Payette police were called to the 600 block of North 8th Street for a suspicious man seen near a parked railroad car attempting to light something on fire. Officers got there and say they found fresh footprints in the snow and were able to track them to a train car where they found an undetonated improvised explosive device, or IED. Police say they followed the footprints in the snow to a camp trailer that was parked near a home fairly close by. Officers say 40-year-old Brent Shirai, seen right there, tried to run from the camp trailer but surrendered to police officers after a short chase. He was taken into custody, we're told, on unrelated warrants and later booked into the county jail on those warrants, but also additional charges for possession of a destructive device, which is a felony, Possession of a controlled substance, also a felony, and possession of paraphernalia, which is a misdemeanor. There's also resisting and obstructing officers.
Breaking right now, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, just resigned. Edward Lawrence to the White House. Any word from the administration, the Biden team on this?
As of right now, they were waiting to see what Justin Trudeau was going to say at this news conference you're looking at live. He is making that announcement right now.
Friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country, and I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Justin Trudeau was going for his fourth term as Prime Minister in Canada, which is unheard of in Canada. He was there for about 9 years up to this point. Now, Canadians, his popularity had been falling over the past year. And since the election in the United States of President-elect Donald Trump, the popularity took a real nosedive after that. And we talked with a number of Canadians. He's a hoser. As well as the premier in Alberta, who called for Justin Trudeau to do exactly what he's doing today. On December 30th, listen to what she told me. Listen to this.
Facing a president who has a 4-year mandate, we certainly need to have a leader here who has an equal mandate, a 4-year mandate, so that these negotiations can continue and there's the credibility at the table.
And she wanted that consistency, as President-elect Donald Trump would like to see the trade more balanced between the U.S. and Canada, as well as border security in Canada. Now, the Canadians did announce a $1.3 billion border security package. Don't know if that was quite enough for President-elect Trump as of yet. He has not said if those 25% tariffs will be imposed. But again, now we have maybe more fallout from the pressure, both externally and internally inside Canada, of what Justin Trudeau has now done. He will resign as soon as they find a new leader for their party and their country.
So we know that there'll be a very new team in place at the White House very soon. A member of the outgoing team is Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary for President Biden. She posted this on social media. Charlie's beside himself already. Here's to the best team in the business. I couldn't do it without you.
That's hilarious.
You sort of wonder how she would be without them.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
This
No,
is
she
like,
couldn't.
And look, in fairness, when you're doing a tough job, and she has one, and you have that camaraderie, you want to pay tribute to the people that you work with. But this sort of has the same vibe to me as like someone on the Chicago White Sox from this past season putting out a team photo and being like, what an amazing group to be a part of. They lost 121 games in Chicago this past season. That's the baseball equivalent of this press shop.
I understand that President Biden didn't give them much to work with, right? It's very hard to speak on his behalf and to defend him. But with all respect, she is uniquely bad at this job.
And she has the entire press corps almost exclusively behind her. They're doing her work for her, and she still is a complete disaster.
That's right. I thought Molly Hemingway, the great Molly Hemingway, had one of the best tweets out there on this. She said, "There is not an easier job in the universe than being press secretary for a Democrat. And yet somehow y'all still failed." So let's get a little bit of a look back at some of the highlights.
Do we have to?
Who some people call Binder, Karine Jean-Pierre.
Flashback.
And when we look at where we are economically, and we are stronger economically than we have been in history.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well, is there?
I just said no.
Is there a real alarm happening behind the scenes that the president is simply too old to stake around for another 4 years?
No, there's no alarm happening behind the scenes. I would put the president's stamina, president's wisdom, ability to get this done on behalf of the American people against anyone.
Jeez.
When it comes to illegal migration, you've seen it come down by more than 90%. Where did that number come from? Because CBP is telling us the number is.
I hear you. I'm about to answer.
136,000 people more.
I'm about to answer you.
Year so
if the dramatics could come down just a little bit. If the dramatics could come down a little bit.
What's dramatic about asking a question about?
Okay, I'm going to answer. So I was speaking to the parolee program. As you know, the president put in place a parolee program to deal with certain countries on ways that we can limit illegal migration, and we have seen the data has shown us that it has gone down by more than 90%. That was what I was speaking to. No, we're going to go. We're going to move.
End of Flashback.
It's just like one greatest hit after another from this crew, starring, in many cases, her, because he, the principal, rarely spoke.
A man has been arrested accused of planning an attack right here in South Florida.
He was reportedly targeting a pro-Israel group with offices in our area. Local 10's Leanne Morejon is live in Plantation with those details. Leanne.
Yeah, the FBI says that it foiled a plot by this person to hurt people at a local office of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Let's show you who we're talking about. This is Forrest Kendall Pemberton. He was arrested after allegedly driving down to our area from Alachua County searching for that AIPAC office, and he had several firearms with him. This is one of the locations he was scouting, a former AIPAC office location off of Pine Island Road in Plantation. Now, this is an old address for the organization's local offices, but he thought that this was it and came to this area, even rented a hotel nearby.
Dumbass.
Documents also show he was looking at a local IRS office, which is also not far from here. Investigators asked him if he was planning a, quote, mass casualty event and then to take his own life. Here's what he told them according to those documents, quote, I really don't know if I was going to end it with my life or not. I hadn't gotten that far yet. It entirely depended if I ended up getting caught or not. If caught, that was a way out. Later in those documents, it explains why investigators believe that Pemberton chose that AIPAC location because of, quote, its political influence and its relative location. Pemberton stated his motivation for taking this action was frustration with the, quote, status quo and, quote, seeing if I could make a change. Pemberton faces FBI charges. The FBI says that he was arrested on federal stalking charges, and he does have a hearing in Alachua County in front of a federal judge on Monday.
It's simple. This is simple. Program on therapeutic fiber was
Head to Broadway by way of football, boxing,
the whole project will collapse.
2,000 shows times 4 people on each show, that's 8,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what was your memory of it? Were you happy with it?
Oh,
was
yeah.
It fun?
I had a good time. I
vaguely remember you doing well.
Yes. I remember one older woman who was very anti-immigration, and I remember she drove me batty. But I feel like I zinged her a couple of times. I was like, "You're an old lady." I think that was the height of my repartee.
Yeah, but who looks stupid now?
Oh, snap!
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
no, I mean, I think the whole country, even unless you're like stupid woke, I hope you're not, but you know, it is Hollywood.
Somewhat stupidly woke.
Stupid! Stupid! Stupid!
Okay. The whole country was like, I mean, I think the biggest issue for the election, one of the biggest ones, was Democrats pointlessly, totally just punted on immigration and let anybody who wanted to walk in for 3.5 years did. And, you know.
Well, I think they would probably disagree. The people walking in probably felt like it was a little harder.
No, actually, there's a great 60 Minutes piece on it where the border, I mean, you don't get 8 million people here by making it difficult. But they're just, I mean, you see they're walking through and the border guys are just watching them do it. They're just watching them walk past. You never saw that?
I did not see that.
Flashback.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said it's not like migrants are just walking across the border. As you can see here in Yuma, that's exactly what's happening.
It's not like somebody walks over and that's not how.
Exactly what's happening.
Well,
thousands of people are walking in a day.
End of flashback.
See, that doesn't get in the liberal media. That's the problem, is the bubbles we live in.
The woman set on fire and killed in a subway car in Brooklyn 2 weeks ago has now been identified by New York police. They say the victim was 57-year-old Debrina Kawam, a woman who was homeless, and at the time she was set on fire was sleeping on a subway car. She was originally from Toms River in New Jersey. Fingerprints and DNA evidence were among the tools that helped pinpoint her identity.
Olga Corpione says investigators this week stopped by her home in Toms River looking for the family of 57-year-old Debrina Kawam, identified tonight by the NYPD as the woman killed after she was set on fire on board an F train in Brooklyn last Sunday.
They said, this is the house where Debrina used to live. And I said, I have no idea. I don't know the name, but I bought the house from someone else.
Corpione says she bought the home earlier this year from a woman with the same last name believed to be the victim's sister. She says days later, Debrina even showed up here in May, apparently unaware the family no longer lived here.
She showed up here around the middle of May in an Uber. She said, I want to speak to my mother or something. And I'm like, okay, sorry, but I just bought this house in April.
So she was unaware that the house had been sold?
She was not aware.
Police have arrested and charged 33-year-old Sebastian Zepeda, a Guatemalan citizen who authorities say entered the country illegally, with her death. The victim was burned so badly, it took investigators over a week to identify her. The mayor says she had previously stayed in one of the city's homeless shelters.
She had a brief stint in our homeless shelter system. And, you know, our hearts goes out to the family, a horrific incident.
Zepeda has been indicted on murder and arson charges in a case that has rattled New Yorkers.
If she was in New York City, that's sad. And what happened to her, that's horrible.
Tonight, neighbors are left outraged and heartbroken.
The state of the vote for the President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio has received 312 votes. Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota has received 226 votes.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected, President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
Is there a Venn diagram for this?
And that's the game!
You've disconnected from the hive mind. Explain.